G'day mates, Rail Simulator Driver here. We did a tutorial just earlier on passenger operations in Run 8, and now we're going to do one on freight with coupling and uncoupling. So the first thing I'm going to do is just start my locomotives. I'm going to use the easy way like we did in passenger. So auto start all the locos and we'll just listen to them start up now because they sound awesome. Now I'll do all the autos to set up the train. So we've recharged the air brake, we've set all the angle cocks, and we've set all the switches in the locomotive. Let's just pop into the locomotive so we can see what's going on in here. Now first thing I'm going to do is we have the brake set. Okay, so let's release the brake. So we're just going to head up to these carriages. Actually, you know what I didn't do? Fuck me. Now one thing we have to do here in the cab for the purposes of this demo is I want to knock off this parking brake. And that will release all of the handbrakes in the train. So let's head down to the ground now. And it's very important that we release those handbrakes because I want to show you what happens in Run 8 when you haven't got handbrakes applied. So we're going to get up here, we're going to take this first car with the locomotives. So let's just check. That one has its handbrake released, and that one is released, that one is released, and so on. Good. Okay, so let's have a look in here. Now the first thing I want to do, I want to close the angle cock. And I'm closing it away from the locomotive first. And then I'm closing the one nearest the locomotive. Now I'm going to open the coupler. Now remember that these handbrakes are released. So let's release the indie brake on the locomotive. Go into forward and get into about notch 2. So we'll turn on that. There we go. Okay, now I'm just going to stop there. And now we're just going to wait. Look at that, the rest of the train's going to roll into it. Now because we just sat there, it'll just couple up, it'll be fine. But just imagine if we'd headed off down the track, that would now be following us. Alright, so the next thing I want to do, I'm going to be a little bit different this time. I'm going to leave this angle cock closed, but I'm going to open this one because I want to dump the air out of the train. So I also want to apply some handbrakes. This is not a massive train, so let's just put on 4. That'll be enough to hold it. Okay, so just a quick check. That one's closed. That one's open. And we're going to open the coupler as well. So we're still in forward. We'll release our brakes. And we shall... Alright, it's ready to move. And we shall notch up. And off, and brake again on the indie brake. And we still haven't quite passed that signal down there. So this train's now just going to sit here because we put those handbrakes on. So now I'm going to come back up and couple up to it again. So into reverse in the locomotive, release the independent brake and a notch. And I'll come back and off with the throttle and brake. Now remember that this cock is still open because we left it that way, so there's no air in the train now. If I just rip this one open, I'm going to blow the PCS valve in the locomotive, which is the thing that detects a brake line failure, and then we'd have to go through the reset procedure for that. So I'm going to partially open this, and then we're going to jump into the cab and watch what happens. So I'm going to go partially open and jump into the cab. Now this gauge here is our airflow gauge, and you can see it's gone up quite high. It's really pushing a lot of air. Our train's coming up because it's not a very long train. If it was a long train, it would take a lot longer than this. So that's pretty much done, so it's just pumping up everything else now. So you can see the flow gauge is starting to come down. So we're going to go back out onto the ground. Let's just release that parking brake again. We're going to go back down onto the ground. Now releasing that parking brake might have automatically released these handbrakes up here. I suspect it will have. But we need to do a couple of other things as well. Now, first thing I want to do, we know the airflow's come down up in the cab, so this is quite safe to do now. We are going to open this the rest of the way. And we're going to check, yep, so when I took the park brake off in the loco, I ended up releasing all these handbrakes anyway, so that's fine. Now, back into our cab. Still got some flow there. Main brake is released, so we're still just waiting a moment while that finishes its deal. And we need to do something before we go out here anyway, so let me introduce you to the dispatcher.
Brzee, coming into your mode now, so we'll see how it goes. But give me a call after light power, we'll see about moving you up.
Okay, so this little fella down here is the dispatcher. So this is an external dispatch program. It's not the one built into Run 8 because I use an external one. You can just Google for Run 8 external dispatch program and you'll find it. So I'm just going to enable that in the options and we'll see it picks up the route. It's connected to Run 8 now. Let me make that just a bit bigger so we can see what's going on. This is our train here, the pink one, and it's pink because we're stopped and we're waiting on a signal. So I'm just going to make that signal green there. Alright, and you'll see it's changed up here in front of us. Now if I go a little bit further down the track and I make that one green as well, this one goes green now, so we can get out of here and our flow's almost down to 0. So let me just bring the dispatcher down while we take off and then I'll show you some of the things that it starts to do. So we're going to release the independent brake. We're going to make sure we're in forward and not make that mistake. A couple of toots to warn people that we're going to be moving. And then we notch up into only notch 1. So this train's actually sitting on the back of us and it's starting to push us a little bit. So it's not too bad here. But if I went straight to notch 8, I'd break couplers. So we can go to notch 2 now, and you'll notice our flow rate's completely at 0 now.
Tracking time, Trouble C159, main 2 switch, or note the signal.
Now if we open our dispatcher back up a bit more, you can see that we're actually moving now, so you can see our speed here. So we're about 7 or 8 mile an hour and we're showing them about 7 down here as well. That's our train number and where we're going. So the dispatcher is very handy in the multiplayer mode, but it's also handy when you're playing on your own because you can control the entire railway. So that's all I wanted to show you for this particular time round. I'll do some more tutorials in Run 8 in the future. Run 8 is extremely realistic. Run 8 is about trains. I can't say about. It's about trains. It's not about graphics. It's about realism of operation. And it's very realistic, so you've got to be careful. And you need to know a little bit about trains. I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out from YouTube, and I'll put up more and more tutorials to help, because there's not that much information out there about it. Anyway, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you.